Hello. Thanks for joining me today, you guys. It is Friday, October 11th, which is insane. I have no idea how it's the middle of October already. Yeah, my daughter is like super excited for Halloween, and I just realized we're halfway there, so that's good. So today I want to talk to you guys about planning for expenses, because I know that it's so defeating and challenging when you're going along and you think you have money, and then all of a sudden, like, you get a big debit taken out of your account or charged on your credit card because of something that it's so easy to forget about it if it only happens like once or twice a year. So my name is Megan Nas. I'm a CPA, and I help online business owners be strategic with their money so that they can, one, pay themselves more money and not stress about their bank accounts. That's like my mission, is to help people not stress about their bank accounts and be super confident with their money and excited about their money, because it's totally possible. So today, one of the things I want to chat with you about is just planning for expenses and making sure that you're not caught off guard and in control of your money. And when I talk about being in control of your money, that's the time that you're in control of your money is before it gets spent. So that's what the last few series have been building upon, is just how to be more in control of your money so that you're not reacting to what happened, but you're actually proactively planning for it, which I think is so important. And the more that we do this, be proactive in our businesses, be proactive with our money, the easier it's going to get. So don't feel discouraged if you are feeling overwhelmed by all of your money stuff, but just take small steps to take some action, and then it will all get easier, I promise. So one of the things that people seem to get really caught off guard with a lot are things like estimated tax payments, when those have to come out quarterly, things that are annual, maybe like insurance, whether it's like car insurance or like this applies to your personal stuff too, like your auto insurance, stuff like that, like anything that happens once or twice a year. Hey, Riley, thanks for joining. I hope you are doing well. And if you have any questions now, or if you're watching the replay later, just pop them in the comments box and I'll come back and answer them. And I would love to hear how you handle these types of things. But planning for expenses is something that won't take very much time at all, but will really help your peace of mind and ease a lot of the stress and anxiety around your money. So last Friday, what I had you do is go through and look at your bank and credit card statement so that you could identify your expenses and see if there were any that you could get rid of, reduce, try to like increase your profit essentially by reducing your expenses. So since you have all of those printed out or have looked through them recently, what I want you to do this time, sorry, I have a hair in my face. What I want you to do this time, and this action step for this video, is to go through the last year of your statements. You can look at your bank account, you can look at your credit card accounts, and identify those large payments or those once a year or twice a year payments that always seem to throw you off. Sometimes when you have like software subscriptions or something like that, you pay upfront for a whole year to save a little bit of money, and then you forget about it, and then all of a sudden your card gets charged and you're like, oh my gosh, like I totally forgot that I was getting charged for this annual fee. So hey, Ashley, thanks for hopping on. If you have any questions, make sure to put them in the comments, but I'm glad that you're here. I was just talking and saying that with these expenses and planning for expenses, one thing that you can do that's not going to take you any time at all is to look at your activity for the last 12 months and see if there's anything that is a once or twice a year payment, like a software subscription that you pay annually for, any kind of insurance payments. I have a lot of payments that come out in December and January for like my licensing and some of my software and stuff. So I always have to keep in mind that I have that coming up. So being aware of what is coming out of your account and when is super important. And it doesn't take, you don't have to be good at math to do this. You don't have to be good at numbers. You just have to look at your bank or credit card statements and see when things are actually going to come out. So go ahead and like look at those, circle them so that you know. And then the next thing that I do is I put like a 30 or 60-day reminder in my calendar that, hey, this software is coming out December 1st. So in October, I know and I remember that I'm going to have this big payment coming out in December. And if you want to put it out even farther than that, you definitely can. But it's just kind of like a reminder to you, like, oh yeah, I need to plan for this so that I'm not surprised. And that also really gives you the opportunity to review those expenses or subscriptions to see if you're even using them or not. So sometimes you forget that you are paying for this product or service until you get charged. And then you can either call them and, get the charge reversed, or you can just suck it up and pay for it for another year. So by putting a reminder in your calendar before those expenses come up, like 30 or 60 days, that's going to help you keep that expense on top of mind. And then you can make proactive decisions about, whether or not you want to continue to do that expense, whether you wanted to research an alternative, like, hey, I don't know if I want to pay for this again this year. I'm going to research to see if there's another alternative, but it gives you some time to do it rather than, being like, oh no, my card was just charged and I forgot I was going to research. And now I have to scramble and try to find an alternative. So, hey, Laurel, thanks for joining. If you have any questions, pop them in the box. I would love to also hear if you guys are doing anything to plan for your expenses or some of the tips that you guys do. So what I've talked about so far is go through your statements for the last 12 months, identify any of those payments, those large payments that usually catch you off guard. The second thing is to put a reminder in your calendar 30 to 60 days before so that you have time to make sure you have enough money available so that you can review alternatives. You can cancel it if you need to, and stuff like that. And then the last thing that I do with some of those big expenses is figure out how I'm going to pay for them before I actually have to pay for them. So a good example is, for me, I have a lot of, like I said, software and subscriptions due in December. So earlier in the year, like June, I start thinking, okay, I need to start saving money for these expenses. So I earmark and designate a portion of all of my money that comes in for these expenses that I know are coming out in December. And it's really hard sometimes to think about spending money in December when it's only like June. But at the same time, if I can earmark a certain dollar amount each month as already spent, then when I actually have to make the payments in December, it's not that big of a deal. It's similar to how we've talked about in some of the prior videos about like saving for taxes. If you just put a little bit aside each time you get paid or a couple times a month, then it's not as painful to have to make a large payment because you're just, out of sight, out of mind, saving money for specific things. So one thing that I use a software called You Need a Budget. And it's like this digital envelope system. So rather than having envelopes full of money like hanging around my life, I use You Need a Budget, and it helps me earmark and designate the money that I'm spending before it's really spent. Another thing that you could do, surprise, surprise, is open another bank account and use that for your annual expense savings. So if you have like 5 things that are annual expenses that you would like to save for, aside from taxes, you could open an account and be like, okay, so I know that I need to save $50 every week or every month in order to cover this expense. And then just put that money out of sight, out of mind, and then it's there available for you. And this concept can easily apply to anything in your personal life. I mean, you can do this for like Christmas time where, you're gonna have a lot of money coming out of your bank account at Christmas, possibly, if you're buying Christmas gifts and stuff like that. So you can start saving for it all year long. And that way it's not this like stressful event when you actually go to buy your gifts or when you go to spend your money. So those are my 3 things that I do to plan for expenses. And those are all expenses that are already being incurred, historical type of stuff. So if I have expenses that I want to incur, like I want to go to a conference in May, Let's use that as an example. Instead of putting my head in the sand and thinking like, I want to go to this conference in May and it'll cost what it costs. Like I tried to plan like, okay, I'll probably spend this much on food, this much on hotel, etc. Within reason, just plan a little bit and then start setting money aside and earmarking that money as already spent so that when that event happens, you have the money for it. This is by planning ahead and being proactive with your money. This is what is going to allow you to reduce some of that stress off your shoulders. And I call it proactive rather than reactive. Reactive is basically when you look at your bank or credit card statement, you're like, well, my money's gone. There's nothing I can do about it. And wow, a lot went out this month. Proactive is like, I know that these expenses are happening and here's how I'm going to save and plan for them. And it doesn't have to take a ton of your time. You can definitely, when I work with clients in my one-on-one coaching and like my strategy sessions, I try to get them set up to do their money, sit down and do their money stuff on a weekly basis. And you might be thinking, weekly sounds crazy because I don't want to spend that much time every week doing my money stuff. But if you break it down and do it weekly, you're only doing little chunks at a time. And you start building this habit to where, and you're doing it frequently enough to where every time you sit down to do your money stuff, like allocate into savings, saving for taxes and all of that, you're building this incredibly important habit to where, and like when you build habits, you pretty soon don't even have to think about what you're doing. So if you can get in the habit of sitting down and looking at your money and earmarking it where you want to earmark it once a week, it's just going to start to become second nature to you. And then you're not going to have to like sit down and spend 20 minutes trying to remember what you're supposed to be doing and then getting frustrated because you can't. Does that make sense to you guys? Do you do anything similar to that right now? Do you have any kind of system where you sit down and like look at your money, look at your bank account balances like on a specific day, or are you doing it, by the flying by the seat of your pants, I guess? So that's a question I pose to you guys. If you can, what I would suggest is start trying to like make a money date with yourself once a week. I have a lot of clients who do it on Sunday because there's nothing else to do and they just get up Sunday morning, they do their money stuff, and then they're done for the week. And then that also helps alleviate a lot of stress during the week of, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, I should be doing this, when should I pay my bills? And because they know like, I don't have to worry about my money stuff until Sunday. And then Sunday, I'm going to sit down, do my money stuff, and be done. So I kind of went off tangent a little bit here, but I just think it's important to do that. So Riley said, you meet no less than once a month to go over everything top to bottom. Yeah. So, but that's not easy, it's not easy. So it's not easy for you, Riley, to only meet once a month and go over everything. Sometimes once a month can seem super overwhelming because you're like, I have all of these things I need to look at and cover and do all of that. And a lot of times you're not doing it so frequently that you kind of have to, it's hard to get back into the money rhythm once a month. So if you're finding it a little bit challenging, Riley, maybe like do twice a month and, go out and have a date, like go have dinner or go have coffee and make that a part of like your routine in your marriage. And just do it a couple times a month. And, the first part of the month you talk about these things, the second part of the month you talk about, these things. So you're not trying to cover all of it in one session, because I know like for my husband, if I wanted to talk to him about money for an hour, his mind would just, because he's not a numbers person at all. And I have to give it to him in little chunks and then he can process it and digest it. But I know if I tried to sit down and talk money with him for an hour, he would tune out within like 15 minutes. So it's not easy because you don't think it's as important as it should be. Yeah, and she doesn't care that much. It's a little bit challenging too when both people aren't on the same page, because if I'm the one driving the money conversations with my husband, and so I know that if I tried to corner him, and not saying that you corner your wife, but if I tried to corner him and basically be like, hey, look at all of this stuff. I mean, especially if it's stuff that he doesn't want to hear, like you spent, we've spent this much money doing these things. He tunes out pretty quickly. So I would just like make it a special date. Like the first part of your date, you're going to talk about money. The second part of your date, you're going to do something fun. If you're not married and you're just, trying to make money dates by yourself, like carve out an hour for yourself and be like, you know what, I'm going to do this until this is done. Like do my money stuff until it's done. And the rest of the hour, I'm going to go on a walk. I'm going to do, practice some sort of self-care to reward yourself for the time that you're spending, investing your time in this incredibly important part of your business. So, if you can carve out like an hour, then that's all the time that you have. And the more you do it, like I said, on a weekly basis, the more efficient you're going to be. And so then you'll have more self-care time, for that hour that you've blocked out for yourself weekly to do something fun as a reward. So I think that especially if numbers aren't your thing, money's not your thing, and you really don't want to do it, like put some sort of a reward in there. So yeah, we've talked about a lot today. This actually went longer than I thought it would because there's just 3 easy steps. But I would love to hear if you guys, I don't know if you watched the video from last Friday, but we talked about spending smart in your business and kind of like looking through all of your expenses for the year, for the last 12 months. And this kind of piggybacks on that because you already have your information up, but look at what comes out of your account over a 12-month period to see if you have any of those large expenses that are coming out. And then start, second step, put reminders in your calendar 30 to 60 days before, so that you can plan ahead for it a little bit. And then make a plan so that you can start earmarking your funds as being already spent before you actually have to make the cash outflow or before your credit card gets charged. If your credit card gets charged, you at least have the money to pay that off or pay some of it or the majority of it. And then for expenses that are upcoming that are not an annual thing that you want to go and spend, if you have a trip or a conference or if you need a new computer or something like that, start planning for it as soon as you can so that you can start just setting little chunks of money aside, which is way easier to do than trying to come up, than being like, oh, I have to spend $1,500 on a new computer and printer. If you can just put little bits aside each week or every couple of weeks, however you have your money stuff set up, it's just going to take a lot of stress off. And like I said, the more you do it, the easier it will become. So if you guys have any other questions on this, if you have something specific that you're not really wanting to ask in the group setting, just shoot me a message and I'd be more than happy to chat with you. Ashley and Laurel and Riley, thank you guys so much for joining live. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope you guys have a great weekend. I'm going to put this up for replay. So if there's anyone who hops on later and doesn't catch the live, feel free to comment and I'll circle back to you guys. But thanks again for being here, and I will check in with you next week. Talk to you later.